This is iFanboy Pick of the Week, number 934, brought to you by iFanboy listeners just like you. Let's get ready to rumble! Leave that out or not, I don't care. Hey, my name is not Michael Buffer, but I do know that we took a long time to figure out what that name was without looking it up. I'm Josh Flanagan. I'm here with Connor Kilpatrick.
I'm happy you are back and you were not hit by lightning last week.
I was not hit by lightning, although it was touch and go for a bit. You know what? No one can say, it's difficult to say like I was almost hit by lightning.
Right.
Like, unless it hits right next to you, who knows? That shit's random. This is the...
I mean, you're not wrong.
It's been like a long week. It's not necessarily bad. It's just been quite taxing. And
It's
can you tell, like,
tiring.
right away, as soon as we start here, I have this sense of wacky relief. And that's what happens.
I mean, you guys have had heat on the East Coast. We've had really punishing heat on the West Coast, like East Coast style heat. And everyone here is just dumb. Like, no one can think straight.
Last week was worse. It's a little better this week.
It's getting worse and worse for us every week.
Yeah. It's actually quite pleasant this evening. This is iFanboy Pick of the Week, number 934. Every week, one of us picks a book, a comic book, that they like best from their stack of weekly comic books. See, the idea is that on a given week, a group of books come out, comic books again, and we read many of them. And then one of us has to make what they call the pick of the week. And by they, I mean me. We will talk about that comic book. It's the favorite as chosen by, spoiler, it's going to be Connor, but it's not time for that yet. There's other books that we talk about, things that weren't the favorite, but were good, or maybe not. There's a patron pick where the patrons pick one. Now, it's not their favorite. It's their favorite to make us read, but that's not necessarily a qualitative choice.
Right.
There's listener mail. Many of the listener mails will ask us about favorite things, or the opposite, least favorite things.
You never know.
It will be fun. That's my favorite part, is the fun. There will be spoilers. It's one of my favorite things to spoil something. No, it isn't. Exercise caution about that. I love caution. Just you, Connor, how do you feel about caution?
Caution is warranted in many cases.
Yes, it's true. This week, Connor had the pick of the week, the honors.
I did, and it's weird because, last week when you were gone was that big week where like DC puts out most of its best books. So it was like a really fun week of comics. The weeks prior to that were really small weeks of comics. This week I had a lot of books again. I think I had like 22 books, but it was like one of those weeks where like there was like a couple of really good ones and then mostly everything else was just fine. And so we're talking about probably fewer books than I'd expected when I first saw my pull list on Monday or Tuesday or Sunday or whatever it was. I can't think. Pick of the week is Zatanna. Bring Down the House, Book 1, DC Comics, Black Label, written by Mariko Tamaki and art by Javier Rodriguez, and Hassan Asmane Alao is the letterer.
Showing up at DC. He's climbing up the ladder.
Hey, it only goes up. So Javier Rodriguez is an artist we don't see a lot or enough of. And I mean, I'm a big Zatanna fan. She's one of my favorite sort of, I don't know, what, C level characters? B? I don't even know what it would be.
I don't think B. Like C plus, B minus.
C plus level? I've always liked Zatanna. Sexy magician with the fishnets. Shocking. So I was excited for the book, no regardless, but I saw Javier Rodriguez was drawing it, and I like Mariko Tamaki. Some things she's done, I've liked a lot. Some things she's done, I've been okay. Some things have been not that great, but for me, there was the draw, the character, and the artist. And this is a Black Label story, so it's out of continuity. It's not her origin story so much. She's already Zatanna. She's already a stage musician. I almost said magician and musician, and they came out together.
Musician.
And it sounded close enough, but I wanted to point it out anyway. So she's got an act. She's playing a room in Vegas. It's not a good room. There's not a lot of people there. She's not the big star that she is in the regular DC universe yet anyway. And so it's slightly early on in her career. She's not like a Justice League member or anything. I don't think she is. I really liked her as a character piece. She's a character we don't see a ton of. I think she's so interesting because there are not a lot of characters like her. She's essentially a celebrity on the Justice League. Right? She's a famous I almost did it again. A famous magician who doesn't change her name or wear a costume. She's just her stage self on the team. So it's like if Brad Pitt was on the Justice League, but not in costume or with a character. It was just Brad Pitt. It's like Batman, Superman, Black Canary, Brad Pitt.
Is she Brad Pitt though, or is she
it's just a famous person.
I see.
David Blaine is on the Justice League.
There you
right?
go. That's much more.
But I'm just saying it's just a celebrity. I was trying to think if there are any other characters, and it's really only like Dazzler.
But aren't they all celebrities in a way?
Yes, but it's a double celebrity, It's like Zatanna's a superhero, but she's also a stage magician, but she's probably more famous for being the magician. At least that's how they sort of position her. It's just interesting because I don't think they ever really play with the idea of there's like a regular celebrity on the team. Like they did with Wonder Man, you know. In those old 80s comics, Wonder Man was, you know, famous as an actor, but he was also on the Avengers, but they would play with him being a famous actor in the
Not to
stories.
put us on track, this story does not feature the Justice League and a famous person.
No, this is the early days. This is her
Right.
growing. I just think that's why her character's so interesting, because she's a celebrity on the team. Anyway, I liked this down and out version of her. She's not down and out. She's in a nice apartment in Vegas, big, but she's not playing the big room. She's not making ton. She keeps trying to get poached for more money, but for whatever reason, she won't leave this particular casino and the shitty room she plays. And she's being stalked by this woman who comes to all of her shows, and she's mysterious in sort of a metaphysical way. Reminded me a little bit of like a Neil Gaiman type of character.
Mm-hmm. Can see that.
Zatanna confronts her. Is like, why are you keep coming to my shows? And you know, she says she's a stranger. And then a monster appears, and the girl sort of helps her. But that's the climax of the issue. That's the cliffhanger. All the while, we're flashing back to the first time Zatanna ever used magic, and it seems like either killed her friends or zapped them into another dimension. But I liked it as a character piece, and I loved the art. I think Javier Rodriguez is just terrific. You know, he's got that cartoony style. He also does the colors, and the colors are really wonderful in this book. The flashbacks have a nice sort of retro-y comic vibe, and then she's in casinos. The colors are bright. There's a lot of yellows and oranges. There's a lot of neon.
I specifically went back to the credits and be like, man, who's coloring this? And I was like, well done.
It's a beautiful book.
It is.
It really is. And it's fun. It was the most fun I had reading a comic this week. Although it was a tight race for pick of the week. So it wasn't like a going away winner, but it was a tight race.
At the beginning, I feel like I didn't have a real good sense of what time we were in. Like I knew she was a magician, but the fact is like, I don't really know that much about her character. And most of the time when I have run into her in comics or whatever, like she's just showing up at Bruce Wayne's place and being like, need some help, you know, and she's got her shit together and she's mature and confident. And so in this, I thought maybe this is what it's like the rest of the time. And so at first I thought she's a little insecure or unsure of herself. And that kind of occurred to me later, like, oh, this must be earlier. And so I was a little thrown off by that. It's just because it did occur to me. Like, I was like, I don't really know. I haven't really read a lot of stories about this character. If nothing else, it's always a background character. I cannot think of her as the central character in a book. And as such, I was like, it feels like this is out of character. But then I was like, I don't really know. Because I don't know who the character is. It's, you know, because she's a performer. But anyway, all that stuff, that was sort of my thought. And so my first instinct was like, I don't know if I like this or if it feels like it's right. But then I was like, I have no idea if it's right. So fair enough. I do know that I saw Javier Rodriguez's name. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I was like, I think that's an artist I like, but I couldn't remember exactly who it was. And I started like, oh, this guy's great. You know, the first thing I thought of was She-Hulk that he did with Charles Soule. There's been lots of other things. That was the first thing that just occurred to me because it was a beautiful book. And it's not so much that I like the drafting, which I do, but there's a bunch of bits in here where the storytelling gets really interesting and fun without getting gimmicky and getting lost in what's supposed to happen. So like first time that happens is, by the way, I'm just going to go ahead and say this. She's topless in this beginning part. And that's not unusual. If a person lives in their own house, they might walk around unclothed. But in a comic book, it's sending a different message in a certain way. And I was like, okay, they've decided to go with just some sexy. And this is a Black Label book, right? So it didn't need to be, as far as I can tell. And when I say topless, like she wasn't naked. It was like, you know,
awesome
obscured.
Powers.
Yeah. But I just thought, yeah, I guess people do that. I've had kids around here so long. I don't remember what it's like. No one wants to see me walk around naked. She goes for that jog, and there's a couple of things. There's a 2-page sequence there where she's running between the panels. So as you start, she's walking down the street. As she gets going, she's between the two panels. As she gets out into the desert, I feel like that's a long way to run, by the way.
Right. She's run for many, many miles.
Las Vegas stretches out for a bit, like from a distance. You know, maybe it doesn't look like it, but it takes a while to get from the street.
You can't even see it in the background
to nowhere. That's going to kill you. And then like the way that the bottom half of those pages, there's a lot on this, just one page.
The bottom half of that page is terrific.
When she's running sort of sideways across the panels of her also running, and you get to the next page and you see as her shadow, then there's another shadow that appears to be somebody chasing her, but then across the street you see the shadow of a Dr. Seuss tree, and she sort of looks around like, that's odd. You know, and then there's one more little sort of clue at the bottom, but it's a lot of ways of using graphics intelligently and interestingly. Then you skip a couple more pages. She gets to work and she's walking through the casino, and there's this really interesting page of people lined up at the slot machines, and you see them all from behind in a straight up shot. And then above each of their heads is a single square frame panel of their face and what they're doing. And there's one like in the top row where the he's looking off to the left sideways, and then they cut to his face from the other side, and it's looking the other way. And I was like, that's awesome, because that's actually what it would look like. The camera would switch around and be facing the other way. And then as we go through like the 1 through 8, 8 people, the sixth one is that woman who's been chasing her, and you can see like she's looking at her directly. Actually, it's one of the other people is too, but it's just this little moment. Then immediately you cut to, we're on the roof or whatever, and there's a woman, in one of the shows, and she's stretching her leg way up above her head. And it's kind of this jarring, arresting image.
It is. It's not sexy or sexualized. It's like...
It is, but it's not.
Well, it's just at its core it is, but it's not like we're up her legs or anything. It's also
reason for it.
Interesting the way they frame the page, where it's this long vertical panel and her body takes up the whole thing. It's very unusual.
Yeah, but regardless of what the intent is or what, it's interesting graphically. And I noticed, and you go through this whole thing, every page, you go to the next page after that, and you see Zatanna in her stage clothes, and she is leaning over to see outside. Then the stage manager woman is framed directly under her. And like those panels shouldn't work because that's a left hand panel stacking, but it does. Like he just like made it work. Again, keep going through. I'm not going to go through every page, but
no, it's terrific looking book.
There's something interesting on every page. There's a really cool scene that happens where we sort of get to learn about her when there's a like somebody, and it's exposition, but an old lady's like, how come you never say magician? And then she has her flashback or whatever. But I like how they got to it. I don't love the dark past magic, I killed everybody or whatever it is, because I don't know. And I think this is one of those things about the character. Like, I feel like I don't want her origin story to be that she killed a bunch of people on accident, because I don't feel like
I don't want her to have like this darkness in her. She's always been kind of a light character in a good way, like an antidote to everyone else who's so
just
brooding.
A confident, capable person who didn't need trauma.
That was what was fun about her relationship with Batman back in the Paul Dini days, was that she was so opposite of him personality-wise. And so if you give her a tragic backstory when she's got a dark chip on her shoulder, it just takes a little bit of the fun out of it. Mm-hmm. But this is, whatever. It's a Black Label book. It's not like this is going to affect anything else.
All of my complaints really have to do with whether something seems right for the character or not. And as I said, I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter. This is a story on its own. If I'm looking at it as a story on its own, this is a wonderful structure so far, a good introduction. I think you establish who the character is. You certainly establish where they are and what their life is like, working in concert with an amazing artist. He doesn't show up all the time, and it's worth it.
This was a wonderful book in terms of the look and feel, the colors. There's a lot of consideration in this book, and it's terrific. If you're a Zatanna fan, I think you got to check it out.
And if you're a Javier Rodriguez fan, you need to check it out.
The other book that was up for pick for me was Grommets #2. This is issue 2 of 7, the Rick Remender, Brian Posehn, Brett Parson miniseries. I don't know who Brett Parson is. We always talk about how Remender just keeps finding these great artists, and Brett Parson is not at all like Matteo Scalera or Jerome Pena or even
Bengal, Max Fiamura. What's his name? Who did
Deadly Class?
Yeah, him.
This guy's much more cartoony. It's much more playful, but he's terrific.
The art is, I think, very appropriate for sort of the aesthetic of the time and place that they're going for.
Yep.
For sure.
This is an autobiographical tale, even if it's not exactly one, because it's about Brian Posehn and Rick Remender as young skater kids in Sacramento. And that's the fictional part, but it's basically the two of them. And so last time they met as kids, they've discovered their love of skating together. They're sort of misfits in the school. And the story ends with Brian Posehn taking a header off his skateboard in a wonderful sequence and smashing up his mouth. And so we've jumped ahead a little bit where Posehn's, healing, but it's not right after. Mm-hmm. And we're much more established here. And here, Brian and Rick meet the cute skater girls from the first issue, and they go on a little skate adventure. And I just thought it was a terrific issue.
So this would have been my pick of the week.
Yeah.
Kind of decided as soon as I was done with it. I was like, I don't think anything's going to beat that. And again, it's one thing to be like, oh, this is nostalgic for a time that I remember and a thing that I remember. But sometimes that doesn't mean anything. And I'm not sure if this does, but one thing I'm kind of impressed about how this doesn't feel like a Rick Remender book in a way is I was thinking about it is that he has a couple of different kinds of books. He has Get Mad at the World and Destroy the World. He has
anxiety
about
being a dad or
his own dad. And then he has, Take It to the Man, The Scumbag, Sacrificers, those are all sort of, and this is a different thing. And I know that he's co-writing with Brian Posehn, who, is a comedy writer. He's funny. He's been, and I know that they've known each other for a really long time. There is something sweet and menacing about this that I do not know. It feels more like the childhood. I don't feel like kids have these kind of childhoods anymore. I might be
definitely
wrong.
don't. No.
What got me here is a couple of things. Have you, Connor, ever experienced the screech of tires after you did something that was ill-advised and having to book it somewhere? Because I certainly have.
Possibly. I mean, that's not something that happens very much in New York
It's not
City.
really a city thing, but like
Yeah.
I definitely have experienced that. Like the screech was a sense memory. You've seen it in movies or whatever, but there's this danger to the world, and it wasn't necessarily from outside forces. It wasn't like there's predators and there's whatever.
Right.
It was just like other kids and just the people around could be really scary because when you're younger, you don't know what's real or not. You don't know if the people posturing are dangerous. Or so there's this like rumor about there's 3 girls here, the Jens, and Gen 2, there's this story about her having had a party at her house and her dad came home and Brian saw the dad like punch her. And then they said she burned the house down.
Right.
All these rumors or whatever. And that was a real thing that happened.
I mean, she does clock the dude with the skateboard later.
Right. So then that leads into that other scene. And a couple of things is that like at the beginning, they mention it. It's the pretty girl. They've got skills and they're kind of mean at first, but then they're nice and they all go skating together. And you're like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And this story about her is interesting, but whatever. And then the security guard hassles them, which was an integral part of skateboarding culture in the 80s. You weren't allowed to skate anywhere, so you were constantly getting hassled by somebody. And she way overreacts and hits him with a skateboard. Skateboard, deadly weapon. Just
oh
so
my God. Heavy, a lot of metal.
Yeah. And sort of the moment like Rick has a thing where he's like, this isn't okay. But also I'm with everybody. I'm going. And I remember that feeling very distinctly. People be trying to show off or do whatever. And you're like, this is a next level thing. I mean, this is a little more extreme, but I just really felt that. And it isn't that I'm feeling a nostalgia for like when.
That time you almost killed a security guard?
No, I'm saying like there's nostalgia to be like, oh man, I remember Pizza Hut. It's a nostalgia for like a feeling of what the world felt like then. And this is the world. And these are the kinds of feelings that I experienced.
Totally. I mean, not to get into old man things, or like you said earlier, kids, they're not just let out of the house with their skateboard and come back for dinner anymore. For the most part.
I'm pretty sure it looks like Euphoria.
People have called the cops on parents who've let their kids out on their own. It just doesn't happen like it did when we were kids. And so there's this sense of adventure. Like you could go anywhere and do anything.
But it was scary.
And exciting. And anything could happen.
Yes, both.
And so the nice twist on this issue is they have this adventure with the cute girls. And they're all having fun skating in this garage. And then she hits them. And then they have to run from these other 2 dudes who are chasing them. And then when Rick escapes, he escapes back to the garage and finds a much bigger pile of blood than he was expecting and some teeth. And so the sort of menacing cliffhanger is how badly was that guy hurt? Is it not just fun and games? So there's like a little bit of like that. Did we do something really bad?
And that is an extreme situation, but it's a believable extreme situation. Yeah. And it isn't like, every other book. The aliens are going to show up or the town's going to blow up or just whatever. And I was like, this is about the everyday perils of being a teenager in Central California in 1985. That is drama enough. He did that in Deadly Class, but he hyped it all up and made it into,
assassins and everything.
And this is pretty much the same thing. There's just no overlay.
This is Sacramento. This is Northern California.
Is that northern?
It's north of San Francisco.
I guess you're right. You're right. I bet. In the suburbs of Central California, fairly
similar. I mean, there's little things like the 7-Eleven and the Kentucky Fried Chicken and the Tower Records, but for the most part, it's about the freedom of just being out in the world and making the mistakes and discovering things. And I'm surprised how many real logos and companies. Like, there's a whole Taco Bell thing that I was like, is this okay? But I thought it was a terrific comic. I really did.
It was. It's targeted pretty.
We really loved issue 1 too, so I'm like really excited to see what this is about. And if it's just about them hanging out, which I don't think it is, I think that would still be fine because it sort of captures a feeling. But I'm sure there's some story here that's being told.
To me, a lot of that, there's a lot of angst and unsureness and fear. And like, I don't know, it feels like you just sort of recognize that everybody's weird and scary and drunk and we'll just navigate this,
right?
And you got used to it. You got used to things that people don't have to get used to now in the same way. It's not that it's better or worse, whatever. It's just, it's different.
Blood Hunt number 4, Jed McKay, Pepe Larraz. Moon Knight's back, I guess. He had been dead for a couple months.
I was going to say, I feel like maybe he was gone.
He was dead. I just don't know if he's back or not. Anyway, Tiger's crazy cat ears continue to be there for no reason. I loved the Doctor Doom stuff. with Doctor Strange, where they go to him for help because he's the only one that's kept the vampires out of his domain. And of course, Doom has a plan which involves the Strange Academy kids, but also his plan involves him getting all the power from Doctor. Like, there's always an angle for Doctor Doom. I just thought that was a great scene. I'm really liking this event. I have gone not 100% in. There's a couple of books I'm not reading. I've sampled and haven't continued going. But I read 4 or 5 Blood Hunt books this week, and there were some good ones. Kev Walker drew the Union Jack one, which I think is really fun. There was a fun Magic one-shot. They've been doing these X-Men one-shots. What else did I like? The Midnight Suns one.
I like Midnight Suns.
Yeah. I think this is a fun event. It feels big. I mean, big like size-wise. Like it's in every corner of the Marvel Universe. Mm-hmm. But it also, it's weighty, but it's not like oppressively weighty. It's almost a small story, even though it's a global story. It's basically a story of survival until they figure out how to get the sun back. And what's going on with Blade, which is he's been possessed by the first vampire, which is something I guess that happened in the miniseries you read.
It wasn't that clear. Like basically, I guess I'm trying to remember. It wasn't supposed to. I don't remember that it was the first vampire. It was some like evil demigod sort of force of nature kind of thing. And then I think he like absorbed it. It doesn't matter. I guess that's the deal. And so now we found out, oh, Blade didn't go crazy. He's been possessed, which, we've seen that many, many times.
Right.
I had one epiphany when I was reading the Dr. Doom bits, and I was like, oh, Doom is just a guy on the internet. It's what he is. He'd be like, well, you fool, you obviously didn't think about it. I was like, oh, it's just every dude posting and calling somebody else stupid. Now, he's got some justification. He's the ruler of a nation. He's a genius. He backs it up. But he's just a dick who thinks he knows everything, Right. And that's the point. Like, he always has been or whatever. But, like, I was like, what is this reminding me of? And I was like, Instagram comments.
There was a scene where he says, he's talking to Doctor Strange, and he says, doctor to doctor. And I was like, is he a doctor?
Oh, I'm sure he has a doctorate.
Do you think?
I mean, if nothing else, he's got one from Doom University. They gave it to him.
Right. He's got several degrees from Doom University.
And to be fair, Doctor Strange is a doctor, but he's not practicing in his trained field.
No, but he is a doctor.
Well, sure.
Doctor Strange. Why did I look up Doctor Strange, not Doctor Doom? Because I'm an idiot.
2 more things. One is Khonshu or whatever.
Yeah.
They're bringing back light, right? They're bringing back the sun or whatever.
The moon.
The moon. So was the light from the moon? And does that do anything to vampires?
No, but I think the implication was that they couldn't see the moon at all before.
It is reflected sunlight.
You're right.
So I don't know. I thought, why not use a sun-based character? Whatever.
Sunspot. Where's Sunspot?
I don't know about Black Panther wasn't infected the whole time. Some of these are a little easy.
Yeah, I get you.
That's a little easy.
I'm looking at Doom's biography. I don't see him finishing college to get a doctorate, but maybe he did. But I did find something interesting, though, that I didn't know.
He was injured. He burned his face all up. Right. Maybe that's why he didn't finish, you're saying.
His name is Victor Werner von Doom. It's very close to Werner von Braun.
Well, this was, 1962. We're not even 2 decades out of World War II. And also, it should be, like Werner von Braun at that point.
Nazi.
He was, but he was also an American hero and celebrity. Yes. Like, he was extremely famous and respected.
Yep. Terrific drawing of Wrecker.
Yes.
Coming out of the shadows. I thought I was like, oh, that's cool.
One thing I liked about this book is that it does have that, like, anyone can show up here. Right. And they don't have to be Wolverine or Colossus. It's just like, here's Wrecker, and he's telling you that he has an Asgardian crowbar.
Which is cool.
Well, that's what you're supposed to do. They're supposed to tell us that. Now, I know it, you know it, because we're nerds, but that's how Dad did it.
Right.
Back then, he worked.
Yeah, you got to do it. You got to drop it in. So, Void Rivals number 10, which I'm surprised is at 10 for some reason. I don't know why. I thought this was another fun issue, and I thought a lot of interesting things happened here. We learned things. There was a prolonged sequence with the Transformers, and we learned about the head gems and what they do and what they are. And I think this is a really bizarre and still terrific sci-fi book that sits on the edge of the G.I. Joe's Transformers world, but lives on its own as a sci-fi book. It threads a very interesting needle is what I'm saying.
You're right. It's very much its own sci-fi book. And then you're like, by the way, it's Transformers. And you go, right. And then you go a few issues, you don't think about it. And then they're like, nope, here's a big ass Transformer. Also, these people you've been watching, they're Transformers. They're tiny little organic versions of them. I really like every attempt at explaining what the fuck a Transformer is.
Right.
Like, are they robots?
And why would they turn into vehicles from Earth?
That was sorted out in either the cartoon or the 1986 movie, is they turned into slightly different, not quite Earth-looking vehicles prior to coming to Earth. And then they transformed into our blockier, less efficient vehicles.
My question is, how big is this Transformer, or how small are these people? Because this artist, Lorenzo De Felici, who is terrific, draws those Transformers very, very big compared to how they appear over in the Transformers.
They're pretty goddamn big in the Daniel Warren Johnson book.
I don't know if they're this big. Actually, I think the scale keeps changing, honestly.
Here's something. How big are these people?
That's what I'm saying. Maybe they're smaller people.
Yeah, we don't know.
They're hobbits.
That would be funny. That never happens. Every time a character meets an alien, they're the same height and size. They're never like half or slightly taller. That's a problem. We have to work on that.
Here's a scale issue. So on page 9, you see that what is this Transformer's name?
I don't know. I keep wanting to call him Cup, but I know he's not Cup, K-U-P.
He's pinned the dude down with a sword, right? The dude is laying there, and I realize he's foreshortened a bit, but it looks like he's no bigger than knee height to the Transformer.
10 issues into this, do you have any idea what either of their names are?
No, it's guy and girl.
I know that the one that I think he called her Salilla at one point, and I was like, all right. And then later they said that name again. I was like, wait, was that the one who got stepped on? Like, I had to go back because I still don't know their names.
So anyway, on page 9, he looks like he's no bigger than knee high to the Transformer. And then when you go forward to page 12, he's like ball height, if the Transformer said balls. So I don't understand. It doesn't matter.
Well, I got to say, I think wow, wait a second. Get yourself over to page 12.
I'm on 12. That's what I said. Ball height.
Right. Look at that Kirby page. See that?
The art is terrific. Whoever Lorenzo De Felici is, good find.
Here is the thing. Back to the Future, the rule there is you don't try to figure out.
I get you. I'm not worried about it.
And this is an ironclad law of Transformers, is that size is not relative. It is not fixed. It is what it needs to be for a given moment.
Sure.
And that is how the Transformer is as big as it needs to be to fit into the place that he is.
I'm totally fine with that. It's just funny.
It's a feature.
I really think this is a great book. I do. I think it's a great book.
It's for some reason, the fact that it's like attached to this famous franchise sets it apart from being just a regular sci-fi. Like, I don't know how that makes it more unique, but it does. It's weird. It's like if you added Pepsi to something and you'd be like, wow, that made it completely unique. But it's like, it's Pepsi. Everybody knows. Like, it's, you see what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, if it was just a sci-fi thing on its own, I don't know how much it would stand out. But then when you put the Transformers in, you're like, now it's a Transformers book. I don't know what the fuck it is. And I like that.
Yeah. I gave our buddy Mike the first trade.
Yeah.
I gave him no context. I didn't tell him anything. I just said, this is a really good sci-fi book. People are liking it. We're liking it. Check it out. And he was reading it and he sent me a text. He's like, whoa, Transformers. Like, it just.
That's what we did.
Right. It doesn't, feel like it, which is cool. It's just a weird entry into this world. And I like it.
And we went a long time. They were like, it was the first issue, or I don't know if it was even a 0 issue or whatever with Jetfire, who was referenced here. It's like, Jetfire? And I was like, fuck yeah, that's awesome. And then like we go 8 months without mention of it. You're like, all right, I guess that was they drove in.
Yeah, it's like a little Easter egg, but no.
Like it's vaguely connected, but no, he's there. And whatever this Transformer's name, I'm sure somebody knows it because he looks familiar. Whatever's like, he's got all the ants. He's got the stuff. He's like, oh, this I can work with. I was like, oh, okay. They're
Does he have the touch though?
He's got the power.
That's true. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed this issue as well. This was another one I enjoyed.
You're thinking, man, I love this show so much, and I always seem to skip over the part, just by accident purely, where they talk about how to support the show. And you were thinking, I wanted to be part of it, but I had no idea how. I couldn't figure it out. And because of a series of random coincidences over a course of years, you never heard this part. So I implore you right now, if this sounds unique and you have those feelings, don't move. Just let this go. You can directly support this show. Unlock
Nobody move.
Everybody become part of a great community. Discord, Facebook. There's a monthly patron hangout. Yearly membership is 10% off. Tier exclusive merch at $5 or higher. You get a patron power. You've probably been listening. Like, what is this patron power they've been talking about for years?
Wait, buckle up.
At the $10 or higher level, you get an ad-free version of this show and our other shows that we do. And where is it? You're wondering. That is at patreon.com/iFanboy. That's where it is.
That's where the magic happens.
What I'm worried about is that people don't know. Like, we haven't done enough so that they can pay us.
Well, now's the time. Stop freeloading.
There's We should get increasingly passive aggressive about it.
If you want to just, enjoy the fruits of our hard labor and never give anything back,
Like,
that's fine. That's a choice.
all right, say the other day you went over to Starbucks and you got the cubicle mate there guy, like, I picked you up a cold brew or whatever. And they're like, oh, thanks. And then that was $13. And then you look over there an hour and a half and they've only finished half of it.
All right.
That cup is sweat all over the desk. They didn't finish it. And you're just like, what did I even do that for? Well, I'm telling you something. We're not going to drink half your cold brew. We're going to enjoy all of it. We're going to appreciate it. We deserve it. iFanboy.threadless.com is where you can get stuff that has our stuff on it.
I hope people understand the tone this is.
Who knows?
I know. That's the danger.
Yes.
The danger makes it sexy.
And I... just like skating in a parking garage, which is terrifying, by the way. Merch store, there's designs. We put pithy designs on things that we like, and a very small amount of other people also like. It is not for
depending on the design. Some are much more popular than others.
Yeah, sure. iFanboy.com/support, where there is a direct donation. We've mentioned the billionaire a lot, but the fact is not enough because the rich are getting richer. So what I know is if there is a reclusive billionaire who's a fan of this show, he's probably worth more.
Oh, you know what? We blew it on the demographic survey. We didn't put a category for eccentric millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
We blew it.
You have a commandant category?
What I'm saying is we put an income thing to see what people's income levels were for advertising purposes, but we didn't put billionaire on there. We should have.
Looks like we got one response here, and then we would
we target
like the workers of the Death Star, we would redouble our efforts. iFanboy.com/Amazon, there is a general shopping link. We put the links to the books and then items when they're appropriate, the music. And there's bookshop.org, which is, I have nothing to say about this other than if there is a place that we can put a link for bookshop.org, which is a way to aggregate independent bookseller orders over the internet and make it easy for you and them, we will put those everywhere we can to find appropriate. And that's just a good thing to do. Let's move back to comics then.
Superman 15 was the end of the House of Brainiac story. I think it was a 6-part story.
Here's my quick question before we get into this, is that I saw Action and Superman. They both came out this week, which is a mistake.
One was clearly late.
Right. And I thought, all right, I got a choice here to make about which one I read first. But were they all crossing over this whole time?
Yes, and also they have a little triangle with a number on it to tell you.
Yeah, come on. This is all lost on me.
I know, but that's how they do it.
It's not like the covers of the old anymore. I got it right. I thought, oh, this is over now. That is the right amount of time for this thing to last.
I agree. I liked it. I thought it started off stronger than it ended, only because I think it was a long stretch in the middle where we had a lot of Lobo and a lot of the Cenarians or whatever it is. Zarnians. But I thought all of it was fun and interesting. I thought the creepy mask that Lex Luthor wore, that whole sequence was interesting.
Now he's basically Billy Bob Thornton from Sling Blade.
That's the reveal at the end, is that he gave up his intelligence to save the day, and so he is Sling Blade.
I think that Lex is we know this, he's very malleable. It's very difficult.
Totally.
Lex wouldn't do that or whatever.
Lex can do whatever the story needs to be.
Yes, Lex is what the era demands of him, and that's fine. That's the strength of that character. And so I thought that the story, I mean, he's been flirting with being a good guy for a while now. And the story of sort of what happened to his daughter, and none of which I knew anything about. I didn't know there was a daughter, and maybe it was made up for this, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But I thought it was very comic booky. I thought it was, it was about right and wrong and dads and doing the right thing and whatever. And at the same time, all in the background, you don't trust him.
We read them both. We're not talking specifically about Action Comics, but Action Comics was good also, where it had that scene where Brainiac's family basically turns on him. Well, that was a good sequence. Mm-hmm. And Rafa Sandoval, I think, drew both issues, which I thought was nuts.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's difficult for me to, because I just went from one to the other, and it'd be difficult for me to delineate.
Oh, look at this. It says next issue, Superman and Zatanna team up.
They're going to release a movie about her soon? Is that what's going on?
There was something in development. Who knows what's actually in development anymore at Warner Brothers. But the post-credits sequence of what appears to be Doomsday punching his way out of somewhere made me roll my eyes.
I forgot about that, and I was unhappy with it because
I'm hoping it's a feint. I'm hoping it's because it's modeled directly after Doomsday's first appearance,
and
which was just his
his hand. He's got the bony things. I mean, if it's not him, it's Doomsday-ish. And I was like, no, not again. We're out.
It's the one thing that they just can't help going back to, that they really just need to stop. Superman has a sneaky, great rogues gallery. You don't need to keep doing Doomsday over and over again.
Because it seems like somebody's like, well, that's the only thing that's a real threat, And I don't think that's the case. That's a lack of imagination.
It's a foundational misunderstanding of Superman's character.
I had this moment earlier with Blood Hunt, and I was like, okay, after this is over, no more vampires for a while. Anybody. In the same way that after a certain, we're like, okay, no more Joker for a bit. And somebody needs to say, Actually, it's a little No More Lex. A little bit.
Well, he's been a sporting character this whole time.
Yeah, exactly. But we need to be on a very long doomsday moratorium. He was just around a little bit, wasn't he?
I don't remember. I just get so annoyed when he shows up that I just sort of
Mhm.
block it out. I was a little surprised that you're still reading Rook Exodus.
Yeah, I don't understand.
Number 3, Jeff Johns, Jason Fabok.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you.
And the Jeff Johns players.
The Jeff Johns players. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is a great book, but I am reading it and I am continuing to read it. And it's part of it is that, like, it is not a very Jeff Johns book, and yet it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because this book is about this. Everything is this huge sort of large backstory, but there's a terraformed planet and it's owned by a corporation. So that's just Weyland-Yutani.
Mm-hmm.
And they've decided it's not profitable. So they're pulling out and they're going to let the world die. It is populated by, there's people who went there, and it's populated by these wardens, and they each have a animal helmet that connects them with that kind of animal. And I mean, I know it's just like, oh, this is the lanterns. This is like he's got a thing of creating what are basically toy lines.
Right.
You know, all the colored lanterns, all the different.
He would have been great in the 80s.
He would have been amazing.
He would have been so rich.
Where do you think it came from? Like, he took those lessons on.
Right.
Like, this was the one where we got to meet all these different like, there's a turtle guy and he's 115 and he moves real slow. Like, literally his dialogue looks like the turtle from Warner Brothers. I have. But he's
I thought you were going to say he was a radical dude.
Nope.
That's less than that.
Not that kind. No, 40s turtle. It's deceptively interesting, but I'm not telling you there's more there than you think, because there isn't. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's an adventure cartoon, and it makes me curious.
And those can be fun, too. I mean, there's nothing wrong with just, like, fun, you know?
Yeah.
If it's done well, then...
It's super, like, serious, and, like, it's not funny, you know, or like tongue-in-cheek in any way. It's just such a weird comic book. It doesn't fit with anything else that's happening right now. It's like a comic book from a different era. But it's done by, you know, really highly skilled comic book creators. So yes, I'm still reading it. I'm not sure what to talk about it, but I wanted to talk about it. There it is.
Rick Remender returns with The Sacrifices number 9. I'm still reading it, even though...
Here's my question.
I think, for whatever reason, when Remender does fantasy, I have a harder time. I'm fine with his sci-fi. I'm fine with his, like, slice of life. I'm fine with his, like, superhero-y stuff. You know, what was the one that we loved about the guy who was terrible?
Scumbag, I
loved, which is sort of spy / superhero / social stuff. Like, I love all that stuff. For whatever reason, when he does like Low, or what was the one he did with Jerome Pena that I just couldn't?
7 to Eternity.
I just couldn't do it, even though it was Jerome Pena. But I liked this issue. I think we learned something
changed.
We learned something, and I went, oh, when we learned it, and so then I thought this was good.
So for all the, the previous issues, we found out why people were being sacrificed and what happens to them. And it's the guy. I mean, the metaphor is pretty clear. I mean, it's not difficult. There's a ruling class and they're sucking everything out of the poor people.
Right.
And, the first bit was like, oh, look what happens to this poor guy. But then he gets completely empowered and he's turned into almost like the Punisher. And he's going and sort of destroying the people who are taking, the gods who are taking from everybody. He is, their revenge. And I was like, well, this book changed. Like this is a different thing.
The whole thing was these kids are being sacrificed to keep the gods young, right? Keep them young and beautiful, at least in their own way. And when he tells that to this water god, whatever his name is, the water god seems to genuinely not know that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the interesting bit of information that I learned this issue. He said, wait, I didn't know it was kids. And then he gets his head chopped off.
Yeah.
That means is what we thought we knew from the first arc isn't exactly what's
right. They didn't know it was happening, but at the same time, like they're supping from the golden teat.
They're still sacrificing people to stay young and beautiful. Right. But I think it's different when you know it's kids when you don't. Right.
Well, I mean, it's like that thing of like being ignorant of the crime doesn't mean you're not guilty of it or whatever. Sure. And then at the same time,
it just means someone somewhere within that cohort is lying to the rest of them.
Yeah.
And that makes it interesting.
That and I liked like the sea god character, whoever it was, like he did not believe that he was doing good. He really believed in the thing he thought. He's like, I am magnanimous. I am wonderful, which is the thing. It's a realist thing. I enjoyed that. Like they were like, this is what the book is now. And I was like, this is very different than what the book was before, Yeah,
I like it.
And I like the fact that I don't necessarily want it to be this book for a very long time, but I like the fact that it can morph like that. That's an interesting thing that happens in these stories, I think, is when it can turn into something else. And then later you kind of have the promise that you turn into another thing.
Right.
You know what's great? Invincible was great at that.
Yeah, for sure.
They would do that a lot.
So those are the books we wanted to talk about at patreon.com/iFanboy. All the patrons of the show get a chance to vote to add a book to the rundown. And this week, by a stupidly overwhelming margin, the winner was Zatanna, Bring Down the House Book 1, which we've already talked about.
Yay.
So we'll just do our ratings on it.
Ratings
on Zatanna, Bring Down the House Book 1. From Mariko Tamaki, Javier Rodriguez, Hassan Osman, Allow?
I'm just going to let you keep tripping around that name for the rest of your life.
I used to have a rule where if I was picking it was a 5-star book, but I think I'm just going to say it was a
there you go
4.5-star book for me.
4.35.
Sticking with it?
Yeah.
All right. Patreon.com/iFanboy. Every patron gets voted a book to the rundown. But at the $5 or higher level, as Josh mentioned earlier on the show, you get a superpower live on the show. And this week's recipient is someone called Eric. And Eric is a human disco ball, which is what he can do is, you know how Emma Frost can turn into Diamond.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Eric can turn into basically disco ball, like all the different panels of glass that reflect light.
Mm-hmm.
So his whole body is that. So you hit him with light, and the party's on.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
But
Disco
because
ball.
of the curves, it will not necessarily have
it's not
same
perfect.
floating thing that a disco ball gives you, which is there's a symmetry to it. This
Sure.
is a different thing. Is there any spinning involved? Like, is there a hook perhaps on his head? He can be suspended and made to rotate?
In college, his friends did attach him to the ceiling, tied him up and taped him there, and his butt was used to bounce the light off. You know, the roundest part.
And then like his catchphrase could be stick it and rotate.
So listen, he can bring the party, but also, you know, that could be possibly used for distraction or things like that. Bounce light off it.
On a glary night with a bit of fog, it's a death trap. It's up to the creators, and you know, this isn't creative. This is Eric's real life. Is to come up with scenarios and challenging and interesting problems that the reader wants to get through, but also can relate to something in their own life. We all know what it feels like to be a disco ball. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Patreon.com/iFanboy. Thank you, Eric, for being a patron. And if you're not one, consider being one today. You get a fun power just like that. And hopefully it's not a repeat. I don't think that's a repeat. I'd be shocked if it was.
That rang no bells, which also is the chorus of a famous disco song.
So let's do some emails. Jaden K writes, and Jaden says, "My name is Jaden, and I literally just started listening today. I started with episode 9. This was written a week and a half ago. That's just in case.
I recognize the time.
I started with episode 927, and you guys were so easy to listen to. I listened to other podcasts, but I felt like jumping into a conversation with some old friends, which is so nice since I'm spending 10 or more hours driving a van delivering Amazon packages. So
You're a hero.
you for making the time fly by today. You're welcome. Here's Jaden's question. I want to ask you guys a question in an effort to avoid the shallow inquiries of a mongoloid Redditor with such an arsenal of questions as what's your favorite comic out right now, which I believe we got in an email a couple weeks ago. How did you get into comics? Who's your favorite Robin, et cetera, and so forth?
He's kind of asking those questions.
I'll ask you guys this. What is it about any given comic that gives it purpose in your eyes? What gravitates you towards a book and tells you it deserves your attention? Deep thoughts from Jaden.
I'm looking forward to hearing the two different or perhaps similar answers that could come from us.
Well, it's interesting. I feel like it's almost two different questions.
Gives it purpose in your eye.
What gives comics purpose and what makes you gravitate towards a book are two different things.
Well, one of them is before and one is after.
Right.
Or
during. Right. Or during, yeah.
All right, let's say, to me, I would interpret as gives it purpose in your eyes is like, what is it that you value about a comic book you love almost?
There's a lot of things.
Gravitates you toward a book is a different thing, because that can be very simple. It's like, oh, I like the creator, I like the character, I like the cover, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, usually it's some confluence of the three main factors, which is concept, creator, and character. Mm-hmm. The 3 C's.
And, you know, if you just start
and a cover, it could be the 4th C, which is a cover. So it's one of those 4 C's.
You just made that up, too. That you said it sounded like you flipped open a textbook, but that was fresh. You know, and if you listen to the show long enough.
Dick Hebdige came up with that one.
Jesus. Not even gonna. Like, I was just gonna be like, if you listen to the show long enough, you'll understand some of those trends, and then you just made the deepest possible reference that's only between you and I. Not only did he reference the name of an academic author that we had to write about in college, but I think it's fairly safe to say that literally zero other people who took the class has ever recalled that name.
No.
But Connor and I did because we became obsessed with the name Dick Hebdige. But what's important here is that Connor and I studied together all night and we discussed it and we wrote our papers, and I got a perfect score, the only one in the class, and you did not.
No, but I got a good score.
It's true, but it wasn't perfect, was it?
That's fine. No, but I put verily into the paper.
You did. You did. That was also
Who's the real winner?
where we managed to bring Eep into a conversation. Anyway, let's not drive this guy away immediately. I don't think we've had a Jaden either, so that's a new.
Right.
That's it. With a lot of Erics and Bryans. Jaden, not as much.
So that's the thing what drives us to a comic is the 4 C's.
Also, just like the habit, like there's things that you gravitate towards that you like over and over, and you see those sort of clues, those hallmarks, those things. Like I like you said the cover, but like even more so, like it's the design of the thing. You see the aesthetic. There's something like, wait a minute, what's going on here? It reminds me of something from. Anyway, I would go with that.
So, what gives a comic purpose? That's not an easy question, but I think a lot of things can make a comic purposeful. Like we just talked about with Rook Exodus, like maybe it's just really fun. Maybe just for 10 minutes or however long it takes you to read the book, you had a really good time.
It's interesting, the word purpose, because that can mean a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Should a book have a purpose? A Rick Remender book has a purpose. There's definitely something that is going on from the creator's point of view that is to communicate with the world. But to me, I sort of hear it as like having a purpose means that it is intentional. There's something to it.
You're talking about purposeful purpose. Like, what is the theme of the book, or what is the art about?
No, I mean like a reason to exist, a something of value in it that means it should exist. That means that it should have your attention, that it should have your thoughts, that it's worth talking about, like we are doing right now, or revisiting, or reading, or purchasing. That it has to have some kind of the valuable purpose. I keep using the word value. He didn't use it. But that's how I keep thinking about it. So, with that respect, I'm going to take a couple of swings here. To me, original or familiar feeling ideas, meaning that, familiar to me, not like a cliche, but something in there that you can relate to or understand, or even that just touches you in a way because of your interest in it. Again, Connor and I really tend to like history stories. And so that, that's the thing in there that is connecting to me. And that's the familiarity. Is like, if you're going to tell me a book about real life or history or historical fiction, there's not going to be a vampire. That's the kind of thing familiar that is like an aesthetic that I like. Second for me, or first, depending on where we're going, is going to be about craft. And it's going to be how good can these people tell a story, an impressive or elegant or thoughtful or just incredibly skilled way. And that applies to story and art. We spend a lot of time talking about storytelling and drafting and coloring and those skills. And that to me is like watching the powers of the creator do what they're supposed to do and make those pages sing in whatever way they're going to. There's 100,000 ways they could do it. I'm going to go with that for my things.
Yeah. And I don't think comics are all that different than any other entertainment medium in that there's value in a broad spectrum of them, meaning
yes,
there's artistic value in something of high art that elevates the medium and says something about the world and people read. That's one value and that's one purpose of art. But there's also just pure entertainment. Like I don't watch San Andreas in the same way I watch The Godfather. They're both movies I really like to watch, but I get different things out of them.
But you could make an argument, and I tend to,
but they're both well made for what they are, because they're just different kinds of stories.
There is an art to the purpose of both of those things.
Absolutely. That's what I mean. It's all about the art of, is it a fun, escapist situation done artfully? And is it a look at humanity? They're all different ways of making art valuable and purposeful. And it just depends on, it's all about the execution of whatever it is.
And how you as a reader connect to it. And there's a billion ways that could happen.
There's value in just saying, that was really silly fun. And there's value in, wow, that really made me think and re-examine things. There's value in both. We need both.
I'm going to distill it down even more. It's like that I'm making some connection to it.
Right.
In one way or another. Through one of those things, through one of those skills, through whatever, like there's some connection to it. Because that, at the end of the day, like you're either connected to what you're reading or you're not. And if you're not, it's not going to work.
Right.
I don't know. It's a good question.
It's a really good question. Jaden comes in hot on his first week of listening to the show.
And it's unfortunate because he didn't remember to download it again. And then in a year, he'd be like, I did write in an email.
This next email is actually related to an extended bit we just did earlier in the show. Socrates from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
We don't know it's not Socrates.
I've been thinking of this for 4 years now. Would you guys still be doing iFanboy if there was no Patreon or financial support for the podcast? Almost every podcast needs cash, right? But not all shows are successful at monetizing. Plenty of comic shows have come and gone. How important is wetting your beaks for talking about funny books? Excellent use.
Excellent use.
We just talked about The Godfather. I didn't even remember that he said that in the email when I said it. I love that phrase. I use it as much as I can.
Is this question some kind of trap? Because if we sit here and we go, yeah, we'd still do it, they might all go.
What we do would be vastly different because there is a cost to the show. The way we do it, the tools we use, the vendors we use. You know, the more popular the show is, the more expensive it is to host.
And we pay people to do things.
Yeah, you know, people who do stuff for us, we pay them. So I don't know if we said it before. The cost is not inconsiderable. I don't know if we mentioned it or how much. It's not a considerable cost to run the show. The amount of money we make covers those costs, and then it sort of reimburses us for the time it takes to read all these books, the books load books. I'm not hanging out with my wife right now.
Like, time is very valuable at a certain point.
It's a lot of prep for the show.
In order to make the sacrifice of what little free time I know I have, and, you know, with the family or with your family, you know, whatever it is, it's very helpful. It allows the justification of that for a reason other than just fun. And maybe sometimes even it helps you get over the parts of it that are not as much fun. I mean, like, literally, I read books for hours every week. And I was looking around my office here, and I have all these books that are not comics that come on a weekly basis that I don't have time to get to. Because 3 nights a week, I'm like, I got to read these comics.
Which we like, but
yes,
we have to do it in a certain time frame. Like everyone else can read their books at their leisure. We have to get them done basically within 48 hours of them coming out. In some cases, 24 hours of them coming out. We didn't mention it. This is the last week of DC books coming out on Tuesdays. So they go back to Wednesdays next week. But we have mentioned this in other shows. We've talked about the history of the show, the behind the scenes. Like, no one's getting rich off this show.
No. The
same number of digits in the cost of the show is the same number of digits in the revenue of the show. It's not like, you know, we're raking it in. I think Josh said in one show, it's like driving Uber.
Yes.
And so it's a little bit of extra money when you're driving Uber on the side from your regular job, like nights and weekends.
It's some extra money.
It helps.
It helps.
And so if that all went away, there would definitely be, it would be different. I don't know how, I don't know. We say it all the time on the show. You help keep the lights on, and it's not a joke. It's not an exaggeration. We do the show because we like it, but we have the way it's grown over the years. It takes in revenue. The revenue offsets the costs. And doing the show when you're 27 is different than doing the show at 47.
Yeah.
You know, the sacrifices you're willing to make at 27 may not be the sacrifices you're willing to make at 47 if there's no additional reward to the fun we have doing the show. As we always say, this is our favorite hour of the week.
I think that what's important here is that you might be listening to this, you might be hearing hesitation for us saying, I don't think we would do the show without it. And what I actually am taking that is, and this is what I'm feeling, and you tell me, I don't know if I would want to say that.
No, I don't. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to figure out how it would be different.
I know. I'm like, I don't want to say that to myself. Because if you were to take everything away tomorrow, you'd be like, all right, there's no more revenue coming in or whatever. And let's just say it's a zero cost, right? It doesn't cost you anything, but you're not necessarily. I don't know that I would want to quit. I know that I wouldn't be doing it to the same extent we are, because we definitely have a feeling of, like, I was going to say owing. What's a better, like, responsibility, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think all the extra shows would go away. You know, we would just do the one show a week, but that might be different in a way we just haven't anticipated, but it would be different. I don't think it would stop. I just think it would be very, very, there'd just be a lot less stuff to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know.
And I would show up more frequently.
Josh would be like, I'm not doing this week. Go back and listen to the first year of the show. Josh wouldn't read his books half the time we did the show.
I really want to say that you're exaggerating.
I'm not.
I know.
It's because you were still going to the store far from where you lived.
Yeah.
We didn't know what podcasting was, really.
There was no
compunction to keep. You were just like, I didn't read this week. Didn't matter. The show was 40 minutes or 25 minutes.
I wasn't there for that.
It was
I didn't know
freewheeling.
anything. I wasn't there for my analysis at that point. You know?
We spent a lot of time talking about you driving around.
I had to learn
LA.
how to talk about comics because I don't do impersonations as much anymore. What value do I bring? I have to be able to analyze storytelling now.
So I don't, you know, how important is wetting your beaks to talk about funny books? To talk about the books is not important, but to do the shows, it's important, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when actors say, they're not paying me to make the movie, they're paying me to do the press.
Mm-hmm.
In this very moment when I'm talking to Josh and you guys at this very moment, it's not important, but it's the hours I spent prepping, it's the hours I spent doing the Booksplode this week and
Are you
editing
enjoying
it.
this sound quality?
Yeah, buying
Because
microphones and go back and listen to the first episode. I used the monitor's built-in mic.
let's not overlook the fact that like it is a validation and a badge of sort of honor. They're like, oh man, based on no reason other than that we are respected and people enjoy us, that they have decided to contribute money to us that they do not have to. That is also a motivating factor in terms of like making me feel good about and wanting to continue doing it. That's not, I don't think that counts as greed. I think that it's a relationship that we've created. So like I have a responsibility to it. What does that responsibility feel like if that's not a thing? I don't know. It's different. I don't know how to do it. I don't know that you can. I don't know you can separate it. This is just hand wringing though at this point.
Yeah. I know the questions seem a little tongue in cheek, but I mean, it is a good question. But when we say, you guys keep the lights on, we're not joking. So there's a lot of bills. You wouldn't think there is, but there is.
I mean, honestly, when I rearranged my office and I bought some lights in here.
Yeah.
How do you think we paid for it? Literally, like I was like, I need money. I got to do this whole thing, and that's where I got it from. That's how I paid for this. My desk right here.
We both use professional quality microphones, which you don't have to, but we do because we want the show to be as good as possible.
Well, I used to record in the basement.
Didn't you do one in a car? The car actually sounds great.
The car sounds great. I learned that like day one of audio production my freshman year.
The car's like one of the best places you could record.
Yeah, it was hot as shit in there though.
There was one show where Ryan was like, I can do the show this week, but I'm going to be driving. I can pull over and do it in the car. And I was like, great. Yeah. It was one of the animated shows. And I was like, you sound awesome. It sounds great in the car.
Definitely did Superman Returns in the car, in the garage. Because I don't know, I was here. So it was after I moved here. I'm going to assume there was a sleeping baby.
Probably.
And that's why.
You've never sounded better.
Yeah.
I don't remember. But anyway, thanks for writing in, Socrates or Socrates and Jaden. We appreciate
Bob
it.
Socrates. What does he call him? Bill Socrates. Ben and Jerry's. Bill and Ted's.
Ben and Jerry's Excellent Adventure. That's the one. Contact at iFanboy.com is how they wrote in. Thanks for doing so. You can write in and get your email on the show. We appreciate that. Also, if you want to write in for a Mediasplode show, you can write in and put Mediasplode in the subject line. As we mentioned on this past week show, we're doing a summer mailbag next month. So you can get your emails in for the summer mailbag for any non-comics media questions for that show. Thank you very much. And hey, just as I mentioned, we had our most recent Mediasplode 2 weeks ago. So you can go back and find it on the feed. We did our Old Men and Old Movies segment where we were looking at old film, and it really pains me to say that this 1986 film is old. But it was Peggy Sue Got Married, Francis Ford Coppola, I guess forgotten classic. And we talked about that, as well as Hitman and some other things, a bunch of other shows we talked about. The main thrust of it was Peggy Sue Got Married, and I enjoyed that conversation quite a bit. And then this past week, just behind this show on the feed, it just released virtually hours ago, was our latest Booksplode show, which is the alternate show with Josh's Talksplode. This month, we talked about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Volume 1, the Alan Moore, Kevin O'Neill classic from 99, 2000. That was one of the reasons why the show is happening while you're listening right now. Books like that. We had a long conversation about that aspect of it as well, which means Josh will have a Talksplode for us next month.
We are in scheduling negotiations.
I noticed on my list that I think we've done 4 Booksplodes and 2 Talksplodes, so I think you're 2 behind.
Eat it, Dick. I was hoping you wouldn't notice.
That's fine. We might have to do an extra one at some point. Or some show. You can find our library of over 30, actually, exactly 1,384 shows over at iFanboy.com and wherever podcasts are sold. That is 1,384 shows that are available. There are lots of other shows that are not available, but those are the ones you can listen to. You can follow us at iFanboy Comics on Instagram to find the pick of the week before the show comes out. Sometimes the best of the week in panels. And individually, we are CS Kilpatrick on Instagram and Jay Flanagan on Instagram.
Is it my turn now?
Yep.
Okay. Phew.
Yep.
Go to youtube.com.
Did you take that pill?
Josh was
starting to take a sleeping pill before the show and then just see what happened. But
hold on. A sleeping pill makes it seem. I have melatonin.
It wasn't a sleeping pill; it was melatonin.
No, which is like I don't have a thing of Xanax here. Is that a sleeping pill? I don't know.
You can help. That's for
terrified
anxiety.
of drugs. Go to youtube.com/iFanboy where you'll find all of our old video shows. We post this show every week there. It's a version of it. There's not like video or animation or anything. There's a still image. I don't want to oversell it.
Maybe one day, get enough patrons.
If those people at the YouTube have finally hooked you after offering trial after trial after trial after trial into subscribing to whatever version of YouTube doesn't make you have to listen to ads and you can download it and listen to it, and that is the way that you want to listen to it, my God, is it a good way to do it? We put it up there. Someone uses it, I assume. I've literally never looked.
People listen there.
Consider writing us a review, leaving a star rating on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or whatever sort of rating, a thumbs up, thumbs down situation, or a numerical rating. We are all about that. We are into
Ratings.
Classifying things on their level of good to bad, either as a binary or a gradual construct is what I'm saying. It's fine. Rating.
You know who hates ratings?
No?
Paul O'Neill. Not Paul. He's a Yankee.
The baseball player.
Paul Montgomery. This is the portion of the show where my brain is cooked to a nice medium rare for the by the end of the show.
Yankees player from 30 years ago
popped into my brain because they're playing so badly. I'm now living in the past. But yeah, Paul used to hate having to give ratings at the end of the shows or at the end of his written reviews.
He got okay at it. I feel like he came to.
In the beginning, though, I had to twist his arm nicely. Like you have to do it, but. He hates it. And I get it. It's hard to distill a complicated, nuanced opinion down to a number.
That's the challenge. That's the fun. That when you heard me have to give a thing, or then you heard me pause and I picked something, like that's what happens. That's what you do.
All right. Well, this is fun. Like I said, this is one of the best hours of the week. And no different. Kidding. Well, until next week, we do it again. My name's Connor.
Well, I mean, let's talk about the money first. I don't know. I'm thinking about going into free agency.
What are the Around Comics guys going to pay you that we don't pay you?
Nothing. This is a sweet gig. You know what? That's what I like to end another question with. I don't know, man, but this is a sweet gig. Money for nothing, your comics for free. That's dire straight. We only talk about old fucking things now.
Happens to everybody. Happens to the best of us.
I don't know any new things. And when I do, I think I don't like
They're
that
very
thing.
Confusing.
Yeah.
The words they're saying don't make any sense.
I asked Connor the other day, I was like, is that the name of a famous person? And he's like, yes, Josh. He explained it to me. And I was, don't explain it to me. I just want to know if he's famous. But that is good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.